Hi, every pony. Tonight I will be talking about my favorite holiday, Nightmare Night. I mean, when else can you walk around with a knife in your mouth and people think it's a prop? I've even been asked by people to show it to them. Anyways, tonight I want to discuss why Nightmare Night might exist. This became a question for me because when I looked at it from Celestia's perspective, it didn't make sense for her to make a national holiday in remembrance of her sister's betrayal. Then I realized her subjects might have been equally traumatized. So first off, the four major reasons why Celestia should never have let Nightmare Night become a national holiday. 1. It will remind the people of an enemy that Celestia couldn't defeat without the help of the elements of harmony, which she could no longer use. 2. Given a mythic figure for the ponies to look at other than their immortal ruler for those of us who want to see her dethroned. 3. Reminded the subjects of a still budding nation that they had to fight off 3 major threats to harmony and then hold remembrance of one year after year. 4. Remind herself that she had been forced to send away the only pony who was anything like herself, and then remember that pain every single year afterwards. Keep in mind that I am referring to an Equestria that had recently been subjected to Nightmare Moon's endless night, not an Equestria that had gone deal with it for a few hundred years. This is because, as a certain piece of fiction would testify, holidays aren't randomly created hundreds of years after people stop talking about the myth. They are important events significant to the groups of people who observe them. The significance can be lost over time, but the grandeur of the occasion isn't. If Nightmare Night came to be even tens of years after the event of Nightmare Moon, then there would have needed to be some kind of trigger for it to have happened. Now, as far as the peasants are concerned, there are 2 possibilities for how they might have brought Nightmare Night into fruition. One is that over time the event lost its significance, the meaning was lost to time, and it became a reason to scare children and have a fun night. The problem here is that Nightmare Night had to be started in the first place, and problems 1 through 3 all speak to why Princess Celestia and her subjects wouldn't have started in the first place. The creation of Nightmare Night based off of the events of Nightmare Moon will have reopened the people's wounds year after year for no reason, and remind them that Celestia couldn't protect them from everything. That leads me to their second option, making a separate myth to lessen the significance of the event. This will have given the opportunity to keep the children's mind off of despair and fear by making a fun new holiday that celebrated a scary thing. Would have been great for the rising nation, but is extremely unlikely that the people could pull off this kind of story. The Canterlot nobles probably weren't too keen to make light of Luna's rebellion so close to Celestia, and the peasantry wouldn't be able to ignore the darkness of the actual events to start a nationwide movement. The last option is that it was all a government cover-up, and that Celestia wanted to keep it all under wraps so no pony would know what actually happened with Luna. That has the problem of that the myths don't explain the loss of the princess, and that Celestia would have been willing to fool her entire nation into believing a lie until the events of episode 1. Doesn't seem terribly harmonious to me. So why is it that Nightmare Night was made? My theory is that a lonely princess saw a chance to truly help her people. She saw the sad and forlorn faces of her subjects and the terror recent years had brought to the children's faces. Still fine with her own grief, she knew she had to do something for her people, but she couldn't yet let go of her sister's memories long enough to celebrate. One day she heard a child inquire about Nightmare Moon's return, and Celestia was struck with inspiration. She forced down her own emotions to tell the child a story of excitement and wonder regarding an upcoming night, Nightmare Night, when Nightmare Moon came down to feed on ponies. The adults might question the princess for a short time, but the happiness on the children's faces would quickly make them think a different way, and back the princess's tale and begin prepping for the merriment of Nightmare Night. If she did a good enough job of playing it up, that would have not only led to an entire generation growing up with hope and wonder rather than fear, and help all the ponies of Equestria forget the horrors of Discord and Sombra. It doesn't make sense to make this kind of move in more traditional politics, but this was a nation that could really use a night where fear could be celebrated. This is Red Pen, saying that manipulation isn't always that bad a thing.